I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
Princess Anne did not raise her voice when she finally revealed what happened inside that private room. She did not need to. Her account was more devastating than any palace argument because it exposed a confrontation no one was supposed to witness. Charles had summoned Camilla to discuss a confidential appointment plan. But when the door closed, the conversation became something far more serious, a test of loyalty, authority, and how much influence the Queen Consort believed she truly possessed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne made the disclosure through a documented private account shared with senior family members after the meeting. She explained that Clarence House, the couple's London residence, had been chosen for privacy. No aides remained. Only a confidential proposal sat between them, recommending 2 people from Camilla's circle for influential advisory positions inside royal charities. Charles opened the folder and asked one question: how many people had already been told the appointments were settled? His anger came from more than broken procedure. Royal approval meant the monarch's direct permission, and he believed his authority had been used before he gave it. Camilla answered that she was trying to strengthen the household. She insisted trusted figures could steady the institution. But he heard something else, a promise made in his name. Camilla did not retreat. She said the plan had been misunderstood, not abused. Then Charles pushed the papers toward her and placed a pen beside a cancellation order, a formal instruction ending the proposal before it could take effect. He demanded that she withdraw her support. Her face hardened, her chair moved back sharply. In that instant, the conflict stopped being administrative. A marriage and a monarchy were colliding across one table. Charles summoned Anne because he no longer wanted the decision hidden inside a private disagreement. The Princess Royal, his sister and a senior working royal, entered as a witness, not a mediator. She watched him offer the pen again. Camilla lifted it, held it for seconds, then placed it down without signing. She warned that forcing her withdrawal would send consequences through the family. Anne felt the room change. Camilla turned toward the door, wounded but unbroken, while Charles remained beside the unsigned order. Then Anne noticed a second document beneath the appointment papers. Its heading pointed to a restructuring of royal responsibilities, suggesting that 2 appointments were only the beginning. Anne had entered expecting to witness the end of one disputed appointment, but the paper beneath Charles's hand revealed that the private meeting had been about far more than 2 names. Behind the formal titles were 3 people confronting 3 very different fears. Charles feared losing control of the institution he had waited a lifetime to lead. Camilla feared that every decision she made would still be treated as an intrusion. Anne feared something deeper, that the crown was becoming vulnerable to private promises, personal loyalties, and decisions made beyond the reach of those sworn to protect it. Inside that room, their histories became weapons none of them could put down. Charles stared at the second document and felt the pressure of his entire reign closing around him. He had spent decades preparing to modernize the monarchy without weakening its limits. Now an appointment plan had moved forward without his direct permission, making him wonder whether those limits were already beginning to collapse. Royal patronages were public causes supported by members of the family, and changing who controlled them could quietly shift influence across the household. Camilla watched him reading and understood exactly what his silence meant. The Queen Consort had fought for years to build a respected role beside him, yet she still feared that every act of authority would be treated as an invasion. She believed loyal advisors could bring order and stability. Others feared those same people were becoming a private circle with access to power they had never been formally given. Anne remained beside the table, thought between sympathy and alarm. Princess Anne loved her brother, but she had never protected him by telling him what he wanted to hear. She saw the pain of a husband confronting his wife, yet she also saw a sovereign whose authority had apparently been used before he had spoken. That difference mattered, because one wounded a marriage, the other threatened the crown itself. Camilla finally looked directly at Charles and asked whether he trusted her judgment at all. He hesitated. The pause lasted only seconds, but it struck harder than any accusation. She turned away before he could explain that trusting a wife was not the same as surrendering control of the monarchy. The king reached toward her, then stopped, knowing any softer answer might sound like permission all over again. Anne lifted the hidden paper and read the proposal beneath the appointments. It outlined a reorganization of several patronages, moving selected responsibilities away from her and placing them under a coordinating office linked to Camilla's household. Charles admitted he had seen an early discussion paper weeks earlier, but he had never approved a final version. Someone had circulated it as though his consent was already certain. Anne felt suspicion replace shock. Had Camilla deliberately turned a private discussion into an active plan, or had she simply allowed others to believe approval was inevitable? To understand how the proposal reached the king's desk, with such dangerous momentum, Anne had to return to the moment when a quiet disagreement became the point of no return. The crisis did not begin in Charles's private sitting room. It began 3 weeks earlier at Balmoral, during an evening that had appeared calm, disciplined, and entirely ordinary. A charity planning dinner was nearing its end when Camilla made a request that changed the temperature of the room. She asked a senior secretary to add a new cultural advisor to a Royal Foundation proposal before it reached the king. Anne heard the name, lowered her glass, and immediately understood the danger. Camilla spoke as though the change were simple. She wanted Tom Parker Bowles included as an unpaid cultural advisor on a future food and heritage initiative, a Royal Foundation being a charity supported by members of the family to advance public causes. She described his involvement as practical, limited, and useful. The secretary nodded, wrote the name down, and placed it inside the official draft. That single movement gave an informal family suggestion the appearance of institutional approval. Anne stayed silent until the other guests had left. Then Princess Anne asked whether Charles had agreed to the addition. Camilla did not answer directly. She said the king understood the value of trusted people and would see the sense in it once the full proposal reached him. Anne placed the draft back on the table and warned that personal loyalty could not be treated as royal authorization. Camilla's patience broke. The Queen Consort accused Anne of assuming the worst whenever she tried to shape the household. She argued that experience and trust should not become disqualifications simply because the people involved were close to her. Anne replied that closeness was exactly why the rules had to remain clear. One woman heard suspicion, the other heard danger. Days later, the request had grown. Another figure from Camilla's circle appeared in the papers, along with a proposed coordinating office designed to oversee several royal patronages, meaning the charities and public causes assigned to individual members of the family. Some of those responsibilities belonged to Anne. What began as one unpaid advisory role was now becoming a quiet transfer of influence. The following morning, the secretary approached Anne in private. He admitted that he had been instructed to phrase the proposal as though Charles was already supportive. His voice shook as he asked whether his position would be protected. Anne promised nothing except that the truth would reach her brother. Charles read the draft beside his breakfast papers. Halfway through the first page, he stopped and asked who had authorized the wording. Anne answered plainly. The king closed the folder and ordered the private meeting. Before leaving Balmoral, Camilla told an advisor the proposal would survive because Charles understood the need for a united marriage. When Anne learned of that promise, everything changed. By the time Charles and Camilla sat opposite each other at Clarence House, the argument was no longer about a charitable advisor, it was about whether their marriage could be used to predetermine royal decisions. Charles began the confrontation with a question, not an accusation. He asked Camilla why officials believed he had already approved the proposal. She answered that no one had been deceived. They had simply understood where the discussion was heading. The king stared at her, then placed both hands flat against the table. His response was quiet, precise, and devastating. She had taken his silence, converted it into permission, and allowed others to treat a private conversation as a royal command. Charles opened the appointment folder and read aloud the sentence describing the plan as his preferred direction. An appointment folder was the official file used to record proposed roles, approvals, and supporting notes before any royal position could move forward. Camilla interrupted before he finished. She said the wording was meant to prevent confusion among staff and preserve confidence in a proposal she believed would eventually be accepted. Camilla held his gaze and refused to retreat. The Queen Consort insisted that she had not issued an order. She had only described the appointments as highly likely. Charles pushed his chair back and told her that likelihood was not approval. His name had been used to create certainty where none existed, and people had begun acting as though the decision was already beyond challenge. Charles pressed the call button after several minutes. The king instructed an aide to bring Princess Anne into the room, and Camilla's expression changed the moment she understood why. Anne was not arriving as family support. She was becoming a formal witness to a dispute that could no longer remain hidden between husband and wife. Camilla turned on Anne almost immediately. She accused the Princess Royal of treating every reform as an attack on her own position. Anne stepped closer and answered that she was defending procedure, not territory. Royal procedure meant the clear process through which decisions were proposed, examined, and finally approved. And without it, personal influence could easily become official power. Charles then produced the handwritten note. A household advisor had thanked Camilla for guaranteeing that the new coordinating office would be established. She read the sentence twice, her fingers tightening around the paper, then said the word guaranteeing, exaggerated what she had meant. Anne watched her carefully. Charles did not move. Charles placed the cancellation order beside the note. The document was a formal instruction ending the proposal before it could take effect. He asked Camilla to sign a statement withdrawing her support. She refused, saying the signature would humiliate everyone who had trusted her assurances. Anne reached across the table as their voices rose. She moved the pen away from both of them and said the decision could no longer depend on whether Camilla agreed to sign. Charles looked at his sister and understood the message. The confrontation had exposed the breach, but stopping the proposal required someone to exercise authority without hiding behind compromise, and only one person could do that. Power inside a monarchy is rarely revealed through shouting. Sometimes it appears in the movement of a single hand. Charles drew the cancellation order toward himself, read the final paragraph, and signed beneath it without asking Camilla again. The scratching of the pen was the only sound in the room. Anne watched her brother become sovereign before her eyes, not through ceremony or applause, but through the painful decision to overrule his wife and accept whatever damage followed. Charles knew the order carried more than emotional weight. As sovereign, he held final control over senior household appointments and official royal responsibilities, meaning the disputed plan could not become binding without his direct approval. Expectations had been created, promises had been implied, but none of that could replace the signature of the king. Anne remained still as the document moved beneath his hand. Princess Anne had no legal power to cancel the proposal herself. Her influence came from years of service, blunt honesty, and a reputation for speaking when others stayed silent. She had forced the truth into the open, but she understood the final decision had to belong to Charles alone. Charles paused before completing the signature. The king's hand stopped for only a moment, yet the hesitation exposed everything he was trying to hide. He was not merely ending 2 appointments. He was suspending the proposed patronage office, a central unit that would have controlled several royal charities and public duties. He was also overruling the woman beside him. Camilla did not argue. The Queen Consort removed a ring, turned it slowly between her fingers, and asked whether Anne's judgment would always matter more than hers whenever the family disagreed. Her voice carried no anger now, only humiliation. Charles looked toward her, but no answer came quickly enough. Anne stepped in before the silence hardened. She told Camilla the plan had not been rejected because it came from her. It had been rejected because promises were made before consent existed. The distinction mattered. Without it, the confrontation would have become a personal victory for one woman and a public defeat for another. Anne refused to let that happen. Charles then called for the private secretary and ordered an internal review. A private secretary is the senior official who manages royal decisions, correspondence, and access to the sovereign. The review would identify who had circulated the unauthorized wording, who had contacted possible appointees, and how assumption had been allowed to become pressure. Camilla reached the door and stopped. She told Charles he had protected the crown but wounded the person standing closest to him. Then she left. The disputed appointments were now dead, but the signed order did not end the crisis. It released its consequences into every corridor of the palace. By the following morning, the palace had changed without making a public announcement. Meetings vanished from calendars. Telephone calls went unanswered. 2 advisors arrived expecting to discuss their future roles, and were quietly told the proposal no longer existed. Yet the most painful reaction occurred away from the offices. Camilla sat alone with the unsigned withdrawal statement in front of her, realizing Charles had not needed her agreement to end the plan or to expose how far it had already traveled. Charles's private secretary moved quickly. The senior official responsible for managing royal decisions canceled 3 planning sessions linked to the proposed coordinating office. Draft announcements were recalled. Briefing papers were collected. Staff members were told not to discuss appointments that had never received formal approval. The response was immediate, because every extra hour increased the risk that expectation would harden into public fact. Anne found the Balmoral secretary before fear could silence him. Princess Anne told the official he would not be punished for recording Camilla's request, or for admitting how the wording had changed. He looked exhausted, and asked whether his honesty had damaged the household. She answered that his honesty had prevented something far worse, an official announcement built on consent that had never existed. Camilla unfolded the unsigned statement again. The Queen Consort reached the line declaring that no promises had been authorized, and pressed the paper flat with both hands. The sentence did more than cancel appointments. It denied the assurances she had already given to people who trusted her. She fought back tears, knowing that the institution had corrected the record by exposing her mistake. Charles received a message before lunch saying his wife would not join him. The king placed the note beside his untouched plate and dismissed the staff. He remained alone, staring toward the empty chair opposite him. He had won the argument, protected his authority, and stopped the proposal. Yet success had never felt so much like loss. The internal review soon uncovered something darker. Several staff members admitted they believed resistance would be viewed as disloyalty to Camilla. No one had issued a written threat, but repeated references to her confidence had created pressure strong enough to shape decisions. Influence had spread without anyone formally commanding it. Anne refused the easiest solution. When an aide suggested blaming one junior advisor, she rejected the idea immediately. Responsibility, she said, belonged to everyone who had allowed informal pressure to imitate sovereign approval. Charles sent for her that evening. This time he requested no secretaries, no papers, and no record. The palace machinery had begun correcting the breach, but Charles still needed to confront the question no official review could answer. Had he protected the crown at the cost of his marriage? There were no folders on the table when Charles met Anne that night. No private secretaries waited outside with prepared language. The king stood near the window, his jacket unbuttoned, and admitted that signing the order had felt like condemning someone he loved. His sister did not reassure him immediately. She pulled out a chair, sat down, and told him that love could explain why a mistake happened, but it could not be permitted to transform that mistake into royal authority. Charles had ordered the room cleared because he no longer wanted official language between them. He requested no written record, meaning no formal account would be preserved in the royal files. Anne accepted those conditions because her brother did not need another briefing. He needed someone willing to hear the guilt beneath his certainty. Charles admitted that he had once discussed giving Camilla's household a larger role. The king had wanted his wife to feel secure, useful, and respected after years of scrutiny. He had never approved the specific appointments, yet he had avoided rejecting the idea directly. That hesitation created ambiguity, and ambiguity allowed other people to turn possibility into expectation. Charles lowered his voice and confessed that part of the blame belonged to him. He knew his silence had been misused, but he also knew why he had remained silent. A clear refusal would have hurt Camilla sooner. By postponing that pain, he had only made the eventual wound deeper and far more public. Anne listened without softening the truth. Princess Anne told him that Camilla's humiliation was real and deserved acknowledgement. She also warned that apologizing for the pain could never become apologizing for stopping the proposal. Her distinction mattered because tenderness without boundaries would reopen the same danger, while authority without compassion could destroy the marriage he was trying to protect. Anne then explained why she had shared her documented account of the confrontation with senior members of the family. Distorted versions were already spreading. Some believed Charles had approved the plan and later reversed himself because his sister pressured him. She refused to let that version survive, because it weakened the king and turned Camilla into the victim of a private rivalry rather than a participant in a serious mistake. Charles finally chose his next step. He would meet Camilla alone the following morning, apologize for allowing uncertainty to surround her position, and make one boundary unmistakable. No relative, friend, or advisor from either family could be promised royal influence without clear approval. Charles sent a handwritten card asking her to meet. Camilla returned it with 4 words beneath his message: "I will hear you." The crisis would not be resolved by another order. It would be resolved when Charles and Camilla faced each other again without promises, witnesses, or the protection of wounded pride. Before Charles and Camilla could complete their reconciliation, the outside world learned that something extraordinary had happened. A carefully worded palace notice confirmed that a proposed restructuring of royal patronages had been withdrawn after internal review. It named no dispute and assigned no blame. But the silence surrounding Camilla's scheduled engagement, combined with Anne's unexpected arrival at Buckingham Palace, turned the notice into a national drama before midday. Palace officials tried to contain the damage with restraint. Their statement confirmed that no new advisory appointments had been approved and that existing patronages would remain unchanged. Royal patronages are charities and public causes formally supported by members of the family, so altering their control would shift both responsibility and influence. The unusual decision to deny appointments that had never been publicly announced told the media one thing immediately: something serious had happened behind closed doors. Broadcasters began joining the pieces. They connected Anne's intervention at Balmoral, Charles's cancelled meetings, and Camilla's sudden absence from a charity reception. The king's attempt to frame the crisis as an internal review could not compete with the emotional force of a husband, a wife, and a sister, caught inside a struggle over royal authority. Anne arrived at Buckingham Palace while cameras waited near the gates. Princess Anne stepped from her car, looked briefly toward the gathering crowd, and entered without speaking. Her expression showed no celebration. She appeared determined, almost burdened, as though she understood that defending the institution had made her the public face of a deeply private wound. Camilla watched the coverage from Clarence House. The Queen Consort heard one commentator describe her as dangerously ambitious, and another portray her as isolated by Charles and Anne. She endured both versions until the discussion was reduced to jealousy between two women. Then she switched off the television. The argument had involved power, procedure, and trust. The public had turned it into a rivalry. Shock deepened the following morning. A national newspaper printed the closed gates of Clarence House beneath the headline, "The Meeting That Stopped a Royal Power Shift." Beside it appeared a smaller image of Anne entering the palace alone. The front page captured exactly what the official statement had tried to hide. The crisis now belonged to the nation. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace. Some praised Anne for protecting royal boundaries. Others expressed sympathy for Charles, forced to choose between his authority and his marriage. One handwritten sign carried a simple message: duty must be clear. Then the palace made its final move. Charles and Camilla would attend a foundation reception together, with Anne joining them. The world had chosen its heroes and villains, but the monarchy's true answer would come when the three figures at the center of the crisis entered the same room again. When Charles, Camilla, and Anne entered the reception together, there was no dramatic declaration and no attempt to pretend that nothing had happened. The king walked between the two women, whose courage had challenged him in different ways. One had forced him to defend the limits of royal authority. The other had forced him to confront the emotional cost of doing so. Their appearance did not erase the private meeting. It revealed what each of them had decided to learn from it. Charles had already made the institutional outcome permanent. The disputed advisory appointments were abandoned, and the proposed coordinating office that might have absorbed several of Anne's patronages was removed from future planning. A royal patronage is a charity or public cause officially supported by a member of the family, so transferring those duties would have shifted real influence. From that moment forward, no senior candidate could be approached without written approval. Camilla kept her charitable role, but the boundaries around it became unmistakable. The Queen Consort could develop initiatives and receive recommendations from her advisors, yet no private suggestion could be presented as the king's decision. Charles had not stripped away her voice. He had separated influence from authority, protecting both his wife's work and the institution from another dangerous misunderstanding. Charles had also spoken to her before the reception. The monarch apologized for allowing uncertainty to surround her position and admitted that his hesitation had helped create the crisis. Camilla answered with equal honesty. She accepted that she had treated his silence as eventual agreement and acknowledged that her assurances had placed staff members in an impossible position. Anne refused to treat the outcome as a victory. Princess Anne told her brother that she had not intervened to defeat Camilla or expand her own standing. She had acted because loyalty sometimes demanded resistance. Protecting Charles also meant protecting his wife from carrying the full blame for a proposal that weak procedures had allowed to grow. Anne's documented account of the private meeting had served that purpose. She revealed what happened so senior family members would understand that Charles had not reversed an approved decision under pressure. The king had discovered an unauthorized shift of power, confronted it himself, and accepted responsibility for ending it. Camilla then approached the Balmoral secretary whose position had once seemed threatened. The Queen Consort thanked him for speaking honestly and told him he had done nothing wrong. Anne watched the exchange and quietly nodded. No speech could have shown acceptance more clearly. The closed door at Clarence's house had concealed anger, betrayal, and fear. But when it opened again, the crown remained intact, not because the family avoided conflict, but because Charles chose boundaries, Camilla accepted responsibility, and Anne placed truth above pride, influence, and silence. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.